For a long time, the US dollar has been the most important currency in the world for buying and selling things and moving money around. But now, many countries want to find other options instead of relying too much on the United States and the dollar. After World War II, the United States quickly became the most powerful financial country and US dollar became the world's principal reserve currency. USA joined the World War II in 1941 and came out much stronger than its European counterparts. Because of this, the US dollar started to become more important than the British pound as the currency that countries around the world used to keep their reserves. The United States also received a lot of gold during the war. In 1944, the dollar became even more significant when 44 countries agreed on the Bretton Woods Agreement. Bretton Woods Agreement created a system where countries fixed their currency exchange rates to the US dollar, which was tied to the price of gold. At that time, the dollar was pegged to gold at the price of $35 per troy ounce, making it essentially as good as gold. However, in the late 1960s, European and Japanese exports became more competitive than American exports. Also, at the same time, the US's military expenses during the Korean and Vietnam Wars, among others, caused their gold reserves to decrease. Consequently, in 1971, President Richard Nixon decided that US dollars would no longer be directly exchanged for gold, thus transforming the dollar into a freely floating fiat currency. This led to a period of instability, which was further compounded by OPEC's 1973 oil embargo. The OPEC embargo of 1973 was a significant oil supply reduction by major oil-producing nations in response to the Arab-Israeli conflict. It caused a global energy crisis, soaring oil prices, and economic recessions worldwide, prompting efforts to reduce dependency on OPEC oil and explore alternative energy sources. In 1974, U.S. President Richard Nixon struck a deal with the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC. It was agreed OPEC will trade oil exclusively in U.S. dollars in exchange for U.S. military assistance. This deal helped the United States to counteract crude oil as a tool of economic influence. It also convinced Saudi Arabia to use the newfound petrodollar wealth to support America's increasing deficit. The idea was the U.S. would buy oil from Saudi Arabia and provide them with military aid and equipment. In return, the Saudis would put billions of their petrodollar revenue back into treasuries, bonds and stocks, thus financing America's spending. This petrodollar recycling supports the value of the US dollar and gives United States a stable source of money for its expenses. It helped ensure global demand for the dollar, because countries that imported oil and other commodities needed dollars to pay for them. The 2008 financial crash prompted certain countries, like China, to consider other options and think about alternatives. In 2009, China's central bank governor, Zhou Xiaochuan, proposed the idea of replacing the US dollar as the global reserve currency. He proposed implementing a new monetary system controlled by IMF to ensure global economic and financial stability. With escalating Western sanctions on China and allies such as Russia, Iran, and Venezuela, further encouraged Beijing to seek new financial alternatives. In 2022, International Monetary Fund, IMF, reported a warning of the erosion of dollar dominance. They acknowledged that the share of foreign exchange reserves of central banks around the world held in dollars had shrunk from 70% to 60% in the previous 2 decades. The share of US dollar assets in the foreign exchange reserves of global central banks has been decreasing in recent years, reaching a 25-year low. Although the US dollar is still widely used around the world, its purchasing power has been decreasing. Let's now explore the reasons why US dollar has been falling. 1 cause is the trade imbalance, which indicates that the United States purchases more from other countries than it sells to them. This imbalance causes a large amount of money to leave the country, weakening the currency. 2. Another factor is the expanding national debt. The United States has spent more money than it has collected in taxes, resulting in a massive national debt. Investors may be concerned about the government's capacity to pay back its debt when they see this. This may cause them to seek higher interest rates, weakening the dollar. 3. Finally, to assist the economy during the COVID-19 pandemic, the U.S. Federal Reserve had increased the money supply. Additional dollars were available by purchasing government bonds and putting additional money into circulation. When there are too many dollars on the market, the currency's value falls. Washington is solely to blame for the growing tendency of de-dollarization. After the Russia-Ukraine conflict, Western countries, led by the US, imposed financial sanctions on Russia. They froze $300 billion of Russia's foreign currency reserves and expelling Russian banks from the SWIFT international payment system. This made other nations worried that the US might seize assets of countries that don't follow its orders. Russia took a bold step by requiring unfriendly countries, imposing sanctions to pay for fuel purchases in Russian rubles. This move stabilized the ruble and inspired other governments to follow suit. Russia and China are leading the trend of de-dollarization, which means they are trying to reduce their dependence on the US dollar. Both Russia and China have faced economic sanctions from the US and other Western nations. In response, Russia and China have been working together to strengthen their financial systems and find alternatives to the dollar. Since the invasion of Ukraine in 2022, the ruble-yuan trade has increased 80-fold. Russia is using China's cross-border interbank payment system, CIPS, since it was frozen out of the Western financial system. Central banks, especially those in Russia and China, have been buying gold at the fastest rate since 1967 to diversify their reserves and reduce their reliance on the US dollar. For over 10 years, China has been using its currency, the yuan, to buy oil from Iran. When the US withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal in 2018, they imposed sanctions that actually helped China's petro-yuan plan, according to Reuters. Now, let's look at some of the latest key developments. In March 2023, President of China, Xi Jinping, visited Moscow and shared that most of the trade between China and Russia is done using their own currencies, the ruble and renminbi. Putin also said he supports using the Chinese yuan in transactions between Russia and its partners in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. 3. Afterwards, in March 2023, China announced that they used the yuan for the first time to buy liquefied natural gas, LNG, from the United Arab Emirates, UAE. This purchase was arranged between the Chinese company China National Offshore Oil Corporation and the French company Total Energies, which shows that even European companies are now willing to use the yuan for transactions. China holds the position of being Brazil's largest trading partner. On March 30, 2023, China and Brazil have also dropped the dollar in bilateral trade and agreed to trade in local currency. Russia and Iran are even planning to launch a cryptocurrency that will be backed by gold, which means it will have a stable and valuable foundation. The BRICS countries, which include Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are discussing ways to trade more using their own currencies. Southeast Asian nations and ASEAN announced in March 2023 that they are de-dollarizing their trade, promoting local payment systems. The Prime Minister of Malaysia, Anwar Ibrahim, met with Chinese President Xi in Beijing on March 31 and talked about ways to reduce the dominance of the US dollar and even considered the possibility of establishing an Asian Monetary Fund. The United Arab Emirates, UAE, and India are discussing the possibility of using the Indian rupee for trading non-oil goods, moving away from the US dollar, as reported by Reuters. For the first time in 48 years, Saudi Arabia has also expressed openness to trading in currencies other than the US dollars. Kenya is buying Persian Gulf oil with its own currency. 12. Brazil and Argentina recently shared their plans to create a currency union called the SUR, or the South. Over the years, the US's aggressive actions and policies to weaponize US dollar have contributed to this shift away from the dollar. United States have been trying to block the economic growth of other countries, which has led those countries to take countermeasures like selling off dollar assets and leaving the US stock market. The normalization of ties between Tehran and Riyadh is a significant development in a larger process of Asian integration. Iran's President Ibrahim Raisi visited China in February 2023, marking their dedication to advancing friendly cooperation and strengthening the comprehensive strategic partnership between China and Iran. Iran and Russia are deepening economic integration and building trade routes to bypass Western sanctions. The International North-South Transport Corridor, INST-C, will connect India's Mumbai port to Iran's Bandar Abbas port and extend to Russia, reducing transit time by nearly half and cutting costs by around 30%. The INSTC could offer Russia an economic escape route to Asia at a time when sanctions are limiting its transit. Iran and Russia are deepening economic integration and building trade routes to bypass Western sanctions. China's peace deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran is a big blow to U.S. economic dominance. Both Saudi Arabia and Iran are top oil producers that are discussing selling energy in other currencies. It is yet to be determined whether the decline of the dollar is a good or bad thing. But it is certain is that the global financial system is going through a significant period of transformation. That's all for today's discussion. We hope you found it insightful and informative. If you have any questions or thoughts, please share them in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more captivating content.